Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Grants and Contracts podcast. We're excited to see you today. As you can see, we have some really special guests that I'm excited to dive in and get to tell you their story. Um, I'm one of your co hosts, Lainey.
And this is Abraham. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Grants and Contracts, the podcast powered by the Government Contractors Association. And I've got some long-term friends who's, we were talking about earlier, and we've known each other for 35 plus years. And so they're here to share about their government contracting journey and how they started their family business. Now, they've had other businesses before they got to the government market, but they started a brand new government contracting business and grew that to where they won some of their first few contracts. And so they're going to come and share their journey a little bit with us. But before we introduce them, Lainey, any thoughts about what's happening in the world of government contracting or what's happening in your world before we really dive into our guests here?
Yeah, first thing, I had to tell you this. I haven't told you this yet. We know Abe loves pickleball. So I was in Austin this weekend and I went by this pickleball court that looked like it had a million pickleball courts in one. And I every time I went by, I was like, I need to take a picture and send it to Abe because he is like gonna want to fly out here to play pickleball with all these people. It was also 98 degrees, so I was like, I don't even know how they're out there playing pickleball right now. But that was exciting. But yes, since we last talked, I know that Guy was my co-host last week, but I've had some really crazy changes happen. Obviously, there's a conflict going on. Just some different political changes that have happened, since we last talked. And don't want to give away anything, but we're actually going to be talking about that in an episode next week. We think that's important to kind of talk about anytime there's any new changes, what could that happen? And, I think in the next week we could see even more changes than we've seen right now. So,
Yeah, Lainey set the stage for a teaser for our episode next week. We're going to be talking about war and the
mhm.
impact on government contractors, good, bad, and ugly. And so, not necessarily to capitalize on hardship and loss of
Mhm.
lives, but to talk about more so from as Israel and Iran and Ukraine and Russia and all the different world conflicts, how that impacts the defense industrial base, which 50-60% of government contracting is tied to the Department of Defense. So we talk about that next week. So don't forget to come and hang out with us next week, and we'll provide the link to that episode in a little bit. And if you stay to the end, we have some goodies and some bonuses for everybody that stays to the end for this podcast here. But with that said, welcome everybody back to this episode here. Let me go ahead and introduce our guests here. And they're going to be sharing their journey. As a reminder, they're going to be sharing their journey of how they started a brand new government contracting business and were able to go and win their first contract in months. And so, with that, let me introduce Steve. I knew Steve when he was single. I knew Celeste when before they got married, and then I've got a chance to meet their son, Steven. And so the Keckleys, they are here with us, and they started their business. So, but why don't we start off by having you, Celeste, as the CEO of the company, introduce you and then the rest of the family, and then share a little about your professional background, and then we'll go into how you started the business in a little bit.
Okay. Well, as Abe mentioned, my name is Celeste Keckley, and this is my husband, Steve. And my son, Steven, is in the bottom right quadrant over there. So, my background, I have background in real estate. I did real estate for over a decade. I also have a financial background in trading. Um, so those are basically the areas that I have focused on over the past, I don't know, 20, 30 years. Coming out of college, I was a math major, went to college in Atlanta, and did have a background in insurance as well.
That's a lot of different diverse background there. So, and sometimes having a diverse background is actually perfect for the government market because the government buys everything. So that's perfect. Stephen, you want to share about yourself and your background, and Steve, we'll close it out with you.
All right, so my name is Stephen Keckley. I'm the junior. Um, I started out really as an audio engineer, then moved on and started an e-commerce business, and then we got over to government contracting. Um, I really had it's been a huge learning curve, but it's been great because I've been able to prove to myself that I can do a lot more than I thought. It's been awesome.
Great. And then Steve?
Yeah, I'm my background. I was a chemistry guy, degree in chemistry, and did that for about 5 years. And then when I realized I wasn't going to make enough money, I went into sales and got into. So I've been in medical sales for 25 years, and medical and lab background for a long, long time. So that was my traveling across the country selling products and selling lab services, primarily genetics and oncology is what I was specialized in.
Yeah, now I have to, Steve left out this other little snippet here. He's one of my favorite all-time preacher in all of my life. And so he left out the fact that they were in ministry for a good number of years as well,
Yeah.
do ministry work full time in the ministry. So, so you want to share a little about that and maybe how that ties into maybe life and business itself?
Yeah, I think I mean, the the biggest thing, in ministry is people.
Mhm.
Taking care of people, connecting with people at a deep level. Uh, Partnerships, and I think from a business standpoint, those that focus on people, the focus on building depth in relationships and building trust and listening to people and really sort of drawing out what needs are. I think super important in a business world, because then you can take your product and apply it potentially if you can help meet needs and help people be successful. So I'd say that's the biggest thing I've seen.
Yeah. I think it's so funny. This is my first time getting to meet Steve Celeste and Steven. But Celeste, we have so much in common. So my background is also real estate and insurance. I was not a math major. I was the opposite. I was an English major. I picked the major that had the least amount of math possible. So I will say that. But then my husband just announced his preacher calling in February. So we have a lot in common. I do want to ask y'all this, and this can be, whoever wants to answer. How did you kind of figure out about government contracting? Was it through Abe? My story was that my first kind of introduction was I actually watched a movie about it and was like so intrigued. I was like, either this movie's lying or it's something we've got to get into, because I was just so intrigued with it. So was it through Abe, or was it another way that y'all were kind of introduced to the world?
Well, actually, it was through Abe. I took a class from Abe many, many years ago. I don't know if that was 10 years ago, something like that.
Longer. Yeah, longer than
Was
10
it
years.
CCM or was it something else?
It was the company that he has now, but he has expanded on it in an incredible way. And so I had all that, and I just kind of tucked it away. Didn't really do much with it at the time, and that's kind of how we, got started.
Yeah, I love that. That was so after the movie, we met Abe, everything, and I kind of got thrown into CCM. And CCM, which is for our listeners, that's our certified capture management class. We actually have a new one starting on July 8th. So if you're interested, reach out to us. We'd love to get you connected with that. But that was my first, I kind of was like thrown in, I didn't know anything about government contracting, very little. And I just jumped in and felt like I was drinking from a water hose, learned as much as I could in 12 weeks.
Yeah. So So tell me, Stephen, tell me a little bit about your e-commerce business, and why don't we start there, because that's your first experience in terms of entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit about that and why make the shift to explore into the government market, and maybe expand how that can translate into the government market as well.
Well, there was a lot of physical output in our business. We sold on eBay and some other platforms, and we sold clothing and used clothing, and we would go to Goodwills and Salvation Armies, and we had our little list of things that sold for us and had a good number, and we physically would go grab all the stuff. It was it was good because I got to have more time with my dad, definitely get closer, but it was also exhausting. And then we had to come back and after you get all this stuff, you got to go post it. And eventually, we got to the point where we started hiring out people to do that part for us, and we just kind of handled the getting the stuff and then basically managing the inventory.
Hmm.
As far as how it ties into government contracting, um, I have no idea. It was it felt like a totally different world when we started CCM. Um, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'm glad I did now. Um, you guys do a great job of with CCM. I realized the further we get into our government contracting journey, the amount of knowledge that we have allows us to skip a lot of issues
Hmm.
that we would have definitely hit.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'd love to come back and talk about challenges of that is really inherent to any business, but specifically in the government market. But I'll answer your question, my question to you a little bit in terms of how e-commerce and what you guys are doing. Right, you started a small little company where you went and found goods, mainly clothing, brands that you recognize that people are searching for, looking for, and then you um, package it in a way that is ideal for people to make decisions to purchase it. And that's really what you're doing in the government market right now, right? You're working with manufacturers. So instead of going to Goodwill, you're going directly to the manufacturers. Instead of you packaging it and then reselling it, they are doing all of that. You're just drop shipping your products now. And we'll come back and talk about your products in a second. But so what you learn, everything you learn from every business translate to the next business that you build. So, but let's go ahead and talk about how you started your government contracting business. Tell me about the inception of that and why you guys decided to start a government contracting business.
I think as Celeste said, she had already had a little bit of experience with you, and we were sort of at a point where, as Stephen expressed, we were worn out trying to build this little thing. And early on, I was also working full-time job, so we were getting worn out, but we're looking for other opportunities, and the three of us wanted to do it together.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, "Hey, what about that government contracting thing? Let's." And so I reached out to Abe, and like they've said, it's and you said, Laney, it's drinking out of the fire hose. It's a lot of information, but it's been fantastic. But that's sort of how we got started. Is we recognize that the opportunities are there. We recognize also, and we have really learned over the last year or two, that a lot of the companies we deal with, they struggle to get products and services into their services, specific services, into the government space, and they're scared off from it. So having people who are willing and able and willing to put their nose to the grindstone and work with the government really gives a lot of value, not only to us that we benefit from, but it helps our manufacturers because they don't have a lot of resources going into the government space. So we found it to be very beneficial.
Well, and that was the first thing when you were explaining your e-commerce business. I was thinking how it could relate to government contracting is just grit. I'm an avid thrifter. I love, a good thrift find. But I mean, some days you're going in and you're not getting what you wanted. It's a true scavenger hunt, and you're always trying to find things and everything. And I feel like government contracting is that. First, it's a scavenger hunt to find the opportunities, but it's the grit of, Abe says this a lot. It's not, you don't fail in government contracting, you give up. So that's the thing. So it's, if you keep going, you keep having that grit, you're going to have success. So I think that probably taught y'all a lot in that, doing all the thrifting and doing that kind of stuff, because you have good days and you have bad days.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then for those of you who are just joining us live, some of you are watching this on replay, but some of you guys are joining us live. If you could let us know where you're joining us from and give us the name of your company, that gives us a little bit perspective of who's on here with us. That would be awesome. And so I always enjoy having you guys join us live here in the podcast. And then those who watch replay, we love you just as much. So coming back to Steve, Celeste, and Steven, how you guys have varying different backgrounds. So Steven, you wanted to be you want to be in the music industry. Steven, you have a sales and pharmaceutical and medical background. Celeste, you got professional services and all the different things. How did you narrow it down to say, okay, this is the niche we're going to start with? Because a lot of companies don't know what to start with. How did you guys go through that process, and why did you choose the niche that you chose?
Yeah, we took all of the. Thankfully, we had some guidance, and we had a coach to help us. Sometimes you need an extra set of eyes, and Abe really helped us with that. And then also going through the process of taking all those different components and then sort of putting them through the filter. So I think for us, the 25 years of medical and laboratory and all that experience sort of overrode everything else from the standpoint of having the most experience. While at the same time, Celeste says she was a math major, she was also a chemistry minor. So Celeste knows that piece of it. And then I think now in the world we're in now, with you have to have the e-commerce. That's a great benefit to have in your business. And so Steven's benefit, what he brings to the table from that, and it's just a new set of eyes. My eyes are a little older. Celeste is still very, very young, but Steven has fresh eyes to see new technologies and ways to get information out and those kinds of things. So, it's sort of narrowed down because of just the vast amount of years. But we saw the benefits of how each person's strengths and experiences really come together, and we can move forward as a team.
I would say too, Steve had the freshest connections, and so that was very helpful as well.
Yeah, because I remember we explored doing services, whether it's real estate, property management, facility support services, administrative management. So we explored that, the service side, and then we looked at Steve's background and Steven's e-commerce background, and we said, maybe medical equipment, medical supplies might be a better entry point. And do you guys remember why I shared that might be a better entry point? It has to do something that starts with a P.
I don't know as far as the P, but I do remember you saying that it was a good niche market in terms of what we could be able to do in the government space, because there weren't a lot of women-owned companies in that space. I do remember you saying that.
Yeah, the services needs past performance.
Okay.
Products does not need past performance, right? Because that was one of the factors that if you do services, that means you have to go build a lot of teaming partners. If you do products, you just need to find manufacturers and distributors to work with. And so that allow you to get into the government market very fast. And so for some of you who are watching this episode, that's a very critical component as you're deciding, should you do services, especially if you're new. Now, if you have existing business, you continue to sell what you have in the government market into the government market. But if you're brand new, or if you're transitioning from private sector to the public sector, you're trying to decide which niche should I start with. If you have the option of doing a product versus a service, it's always better to start with the product, because in that situation, it just comes down to, is it the right product, and do you have decent pricing, competitive pricing, and you can get started quickly in the government market for that purpose there. Now, Stephen, I have a question for you. Talking about family dynamics a little bit. Some families work very well with each other. Some families don't work well with each other. Now, this is a family business. You're talking about mother, CEO. She's always the boss anyway. We know that the mom's the boss anyway, right? And then you got a husband, then you got a son. From your perspective, being the son in the family business, what are some things you see, or what are some advice you can share with other family who have a family business similar to you guys?
Just can't stand them. But nah, really, really. I think if anything, it's grown our family closer. We're great at, I think, and it has made us better at dealing with conflict. But I think the best thing above winning a contract or anything has definitely been getting tighter with my folks over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's been awesome.
I have a couple follow-up questions. So when I first got into government contracting, I was working with family, but not my family, my in-laws. Which I know that word can be scary for some people. I love my in-laws. I have the greatest in-laws. You know, I really won the lottery in that aspect. So nothing like that. But when I was working with my husband, so this is kind of, I guess, a question for Celeste and Steve. We work together every single day. So, you know, Monday through Friday, we work together. So on the weekends, you know, that was sometimes I'd say, hey, you go fishing. I'm going to go do this. You know, we've been together a lot. Is that kind of the dynamic with y'all, or you're still like, no, we do everything together on the weekends?
We pretty much, I mean, at the end of every day, we spend time watching our favorite shows together.
Okay,
I mean, so we do have some time that we don't do things, like I go spend time with my mom every weekend, but we generally do most things still together.
No. I mean, we do also, the dynamic is, you know, we don't do this for work. We don't do the same things. You know, we're not doing, you know, she definitely has more of the responsibilities as a CEO would, of overall management of website, you know, taking care of all that piece of it, and any kind of legal kinds of things we have to do, where, you know, Stephen and I tend to be more on the sales and business development side of things. And so we work together, but as time's gone, we really are doing our you know, together. We share stories along the day and all that, but we have about a 2-hour meeting once a week, and we sort of talk business. And on the weekends, we don't really talk business. You know, it's not, but we enjoy it being separated.
Yeah.
So she has her piece of it. I have my piece. It makes it for, and Stephen has his piece. And so there's some sanity still left in our family once it's all done.
Yeah, that sounds like such a good dynamic, because for us, it was kind of business all the time. So we'd be coming over, you know, for a Saturday dinner, and I'd be like, can we just talk about the weather? You know, I don't want to talk about business. You know, this is my day off. Can we just not talk about it? And my husband and his dad, they've always worked together, so they kind of always talk business. But I just think it's funny kind of hearing other people's perspective, because I don't know if y'all get the same thing, but so many people would ask us, how are y'all together all day? You know, I could never work with my husband, or I could never work with my family. And I'm like, we just work, you know, we go to lunch together. It's not that big of a deal. So
I will say too, we are in separate spaces in the house. So we're not literally in the same space all day long.
I think that's good too. Which Abe and Via, I mean, I guess I've never asked y'all that question. They work together as well. And from what I see as being a team member, they work very well together. So
I have to chime in on that. So in one of my previous business, Vien and I, it was real estate. And so she said, hey, I want to come and help you out with the real estate business. and 1 week later she just disappeared. And I probably did something that hurt the 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 dynamic of how we work together in the business. And so 1 week later, she just stopped coming in. Never told me why. I think she was protecting me from from my feelings or something like that. But the second time around, I think now we're a little bit older and more mature. So the second time around, it's awesome. And so the first time around, it wasn't, from my perspective, I don't know what happened, and it did not work out. But yeah, so yeah, but that's part of life, right? You do things together, and sometimes it in that moment, but you grow over time, and you realize that you can still do things together. Now, if you guys are watching this episode and if you have a family business, maybe put in the chat, maybe how your family work together, and give us a little bit of your thoughts in the chat as well, in the comments area there. So next question. Now let's go ahead and tell me the name of your business, the niche, the industry, and how did you guys go and build your infrastructure?
The name of our company is Amalst, AMALST Group. And Amalst, this was Celeste. Amalst is actually those AM, AL, and ST are the first two letters of our three kids' names. So it's, very, very random, but it works fine in government space. I'm sure you guys talk about that. It's not, it's not Bob's, tractors. So it's a very generic name, which we learned is very valuable and gives us a lot of flexibility in the government space. So, but that's the name of the company. And so again, our products are again mostly in the laboratory medical kind of space, and we work with, as you said, manufacturers. We sort of have a couple parts of our business. One side of it really is working with manufacturers and distributing those products for those companies, and the other piece of it is actually looking for solicitations. Most of the day, looking for solicitation, federal, state, local, whatever it may be. We also do have a couple corporate companies that we work with as well, that they use us as actually part of their supplier diversity program.
Yeah, well, that's actually good. So you're saying you have a government contracting arm, and then you also have a private sector arm where you're growing and selling the same products in the private sector as well. How did you come to the point where you decided to do both?
Well, that was interesting. We received a call, and actually, we were talking to you a little after we got that call from a company that was looking for an MBE, and we weren't even sure it was real. Mm-hmm. So we kind of vetted the company this way and that way to try to figure out, is this real? But they saw us on the list, and they contacted us, and we, had some time with them online. We had a meeting, and they decided to choose us to be a vendor for them in the state of Georgia, and they're starting to use us in other states as well.
Yeah. And it's a public company, $1 billion revenue kind of company, so it's a good opportunity for us.
Yeah, and let me give you a little bit, for those of you who's joining us on this episode, I'll give you a little bit more perspective on that. So part of your business strategy in the government market is to, once you have your business established, you want to go after different certifications, small business certifications that you may qualify for, whether it's federal certifications, the 8A, the Hub Zone, STVSB, the VOSB, or the any of the other certifications you qualify for, the WSB at the federal level, or at the commercial level, you want your minority business enterprise MBE certification, or your DBE, and lots of other certifications. In a future class, we'll come back and revisit what are certifications and how to obtain those. But that's what they did, right? During our coaching sessions, we talked about, let's go after your certifications, and they took the time to get their certifications. And then by having that certifications in the state of Georgia, there is the Georgia Minority Supply Diversity Council. And so they attended those events. They got their company listed with GMSDC, and that's how you guys were found. So very important decision. Now, quickly, Celeste, talk about the certification process. What was that like in trying to get that certification? Because now is reaping rewards for you. Tell our audience a little about that process.
Well, that process was definitely involved. You have to pay close attention to detail, which is a good practice for when you're actually doing contracts as well. Um, Steve was probably at the head of that more, so you may want to add more to it. But I do know that you have to follow directions very carefully, or you will be very frustrated in that process. So that's probably one of the most important things I would say is as you go through that process, understand that the government isn't on the same time frame as we are because we want everything today and they want everything whenever they want everything. So it's going to take time and we have to have a lot of patience going through that process. I don't know if you
Yeah, very detailed, very lots of yeah. I mean, my job was mainly collecting all that information. And there's to get on these to be certified in these certain areas, you have to provide lots and lots of information. In the end, though, at least a couple of those require the CEO to have a face-to-face. It's typically virtual. And Celeste basically has to, then has to talk to the certifying body and state our case. And so it's a couple different pieces, but it's challenging, but it is starting to pay off. It's not you still have to build a great business. Mm-hmm. Either way, it's like it's a good, really good to have, but I think the challenge I felt was, we're you can spend so much time doing that you can also put other things on the back burner that maybe shouldn't be, like just the whole idea of growing your business. So finding that balance for me was sort of difficult.
Yeah, I will add too, as far as the interviewing process, the interviewing process was interesting. It was different with each person that I spoke with. But the overall feel that I got was that they want to understand that you understand your business and that you are really committed to what you're doing. I think that's the bottom line of what they want to see and feel.
Yeah, that it was really funny. So when I was doing my WSB interview, before the interview, I had just had a call with Abe. We were just discussing, it was my first time doing everything. So just discussing, what are some of the questions? And he was like, don't worry, it's going to be really easy. Just, answer about your business. I get on that call and I felt like, I mean, the same vibes of they were trying to make sure I know what I'm doing, but it was just like, as soon as you answer a question, it was another one. Like I was getting drilled, like I couldn't even catch my breath. And I called Abe after and I said, Abe, that was a hard interview. I'm gonna tell you that. Like, you told me this was gonna be easy, and I was nervous the whole time because I felt like I couldn't even get my thoughts because they just were like question after question after question. And but it ended up going well, and I ended up quote unquote passing. And I think probably if you answer your questions, that's what they're looking for, so you do pass. But it can be a little intimidating, even, and mine was over Zoom. So I'm like, I could only imagine if I would have had to go in person or be in person and do that interview.
Well, what they're looking for is this here, because there's a lot of fraud in small business certifications. And so what they're really looking for is they're trying to see, does Steve really own the business and Celeste is just on paper? Does Celeste even know what the company's about? And in your situation, Lainey, they're like, okay, there's this guy named Jason Buffington and there's this lady named Lainey Buffington. Is she just on paper, the CEO, or does she really know her business? So that's the other side of what they're looking for. They grill you because they want to see if you would falter in the answer. Because if they say, what do you do? We sell stuff, right? What kind of stuff you sell? We just sell stuff that from a distributor. And so if you don't know the specifics, then they're looking to weed out the fraud of where the woman has a full-time job, and the husband puts the woman as a CEO so they can get a women-owned certification. So that's really what they're looking for. Um, so those tough questions, if you own the business, you don't have to worry about it, and you're operating in it. So, but good job on that there. So for if you are in the process, if you're hanging out with us here, if you're in the process of getting your small business certification, or if you're interested in getting your small business certification, reach out to us. We do want to help you to navigate that process there. Excited that your MBE opened up doors and now is helping you to get to some wins there. Tell us a little bit about your first contract award and what that was like, and how long did it take to your first contract award?
How long did it take? You want to tell him, Stephen?
I don't remember.
It's a blur.
You guys, it took you 6 months from
Okay.
from starting your business to your first contract award. But tell us a little bit about how you got it and what the amount was, and a little bit about that side of it.
Yeah, it was, we as we were building, like you said, 6 months, it probably took us all of that 6 months to build the foundations of a brand new business from the foundation. But we were starting to send out, we're starting to build relationships, and we were starting to look at solicitations. And, as you mentioned, selling products is can happen a little bit faster sometimes. And so we happened to find, there's in the state of Alabama, they have a system in place that you buy, they advertise their products and service solicitation for under a certain dollar amount. So we basically got it's called Alabama Buys. We actually picked up our first couple little deals over there, just buying some products. I think in the end, one of them was for the state clinical laboratory, and the other was for environmental office or something like that. But we, small little deals, $1,000, $1,500 deals, where you don't make a lot of money, but that really wasn't the point. It was to make a little bit, and it did wonders for our confidence that actually we could do this. And we, believe me, we celebrated. Celeste is the CEO, but also the queen of celebration. So if we may end up spending all of on those deals. Probably we spent the profit maybe to go out, but it was so valuable to us. But it started, and it was very small. We got that one, and then maybe a month later we got a second one, and then it's starting to pick up from there.
Yeah. One thing I'd add to that too is you could feel the momentum building. I mean, there were hours and hours spent looking at opportunities.
So right now, if you could estimate approximately how many contracts have you guys won? Because now it's been about a year and a half now since you guys started your first business. You won your first one in about 6 months into it, from no company in the government market to forming a whole new company, building a website, getting support, getting coaching support, but approximately how many contracts have you guys won?
Five or six, and then a couple, as far as that part, and then we've had some commercial things as well, but just as far as government-based contracts, by 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a lot more out there that we're waiting to hear, which is great. We're excited about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's, kudos to you for pushing through and, getting to your first contract awards, because a lot of companies only dream about, a lot of people only dream about starting business. You guys actually did that. And those who have businesses, they only dream about winning contract. You guys have achieved that. Now you're moving on to the next phase of what you guys are doing, which is growing your business. Share a little bit about what's ahead for you guys as it relates to your business.
Stephen, you want to? We've got so many irons in the fire right now, and we're spending. And one of the things that Abe and his team do a great job of is talking about not just your product or your service and sort of selling that, but it's the partnership aspects of things. You know, you to be successful in the government space, you need people and you need teams and you need relationships. You know, whether it's in subcontracting relationships or teaming partners or those kinds of things. So I think right now, you know, we've sort of maybe the first 6 or 8 months was sort of building foundation. The next few months was getting a few wins under our belt. And now it's sort of full-fledged, okay, let's really focus in on relationships. Let's grow this thing and expand it based on building relationships, helping people, that back and forth that goes on. I think that's sort of the stage we're in right now. And we're learning. I mean, we don't have that all figured out, but that's where we are. It's sort of in that spot now where we're trying to do that and be great citizens and helping other people be successful, and we're reaping some benefit from that.
Yeah. One area that you guys are expanding to is more the consulting side of it, right? The the service side of it. So can you dive a little bit deeper and share how that ties back to your products? But tell us a little bit about the service side that you guys are thinking about.
Well, one of the things that we noticed is when we were starting to build partnerships with other companies, some of the we went to actually a conference called ADLM, and it was in Chicago. We went last year, and we're going back this year. But some of the partnerships that were developed through that were companies that were actually overseas, and so as we've been servicing them and interacting with them, one of the things we thought about is we're helping companies bring their products into the U.S. already. It's like, why don't we expand on that? And so we talked to Abe about that, and really, you really inspired us in that, you know, just to see a vision for how that could play out in the future and not too far in the future. So we've gone to other conferences. We've spoken to other companies that are wanting to come into the United States. And the government market is, like Steve mentioned earlier, a great space for them because they're coming into the country, but also they're going to be able to put their products in the country, but also work with the government because the government does desire some of these products that are coming in, some of these specialty products.
I think also, you know, we do that with, we've seen that more with the international, but from a practical standpoint, we've seen a lot of U.S. companies who have products that they don't know how to sell. So what they do is they find a distributor or a manufacturer's rep or somebody like that to hopefully sell it. But they don't know how to walk through a lot of the processes. They don't understand regulatory maybe, or they don't understand they don't have easy access. And so they need specialists that I think that you guys help train, people who understand the government space, because, you know, international, but also national, they don't know how to move products in. So there's a great opportunity, I think, for us as small businesses and educated small businesses in the government space to be able to help companies that, you know, really don't know how to proceed. And there's whatever your specialty is, you can actually support and help a lot of people be able to make those moves.
Can you dive a little deeper into that in terms of like some specific products that you guys are starting to develop relationship with, and like some of the unique products that you guys are engaging manufacturers and emerging tech companies? Go into some specifics there.
I think that we're dealing with a company right now that's out of Spain. That's is very specific. They only have really one product, maybe two sizes of that one product, and a special product for used primarily in research. It'd be used in university labs. It'd be used at places like the NIH and those kinds of things. Also could be used in a bigger case at a pharmaceutical company as well. But in a situation like that, they don't know the U.S. market. but they have something unique. They have something it's not available here in the U.S. right now. It doesn't have to be FDA approved or all the, it doesn't have to be done like that. There's not that much, not that many hoops that you have to jump through, but they don't know anything about the hoops at all. And so just being able to get in and start building relationships with contracting officers here or end users here in the government space, just starting to communicate about those products and starting to introduce a little bit about, hey, this could really help your end users, your scientists in this case. But it takes a lot of, for us, we've had to really sort of buckle down and learn the product so we can at least have a good conversation with somebody. But I think they really value having somebody with feet on the street here in the U.S. that can help walk through that. And if we don't know the answer, there's so many great resources to tap into, resources that we can get through the government, but resources we have with people like Abraham and others who understand what the process is. So that's one, for instance. And then we have another one in Finland right now that we'll see where it goes, but it's definitely has a DoD application. It's actually a product that's being used right now in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. And so those kinds of things of understanding how to take that product and then come into the U.S. market. So we're going, next month, 2 months, going to a specific government. It's a military conference that's in Huntsville, and we'll go there and go show off the tool and see if we can't make some moves. But those are the kinds of situations. Just a couple examples of things that we're working with internationally.
I'll mention too, there's a third where the product is not something that's necessarily unique, but it's way less than what they would get in the United States. So there's been some challenges with this particular product because we don't have anybody who's used this product in the United States yet. So it's a good idea to a lot of agencies, but they want to see reviews. They want to see proof from other people in the U.S. who've used this product. So that's been kind of a challenge for us. But there is lots of profit margin because it is manufactured for less and it performs the same thing.
Yeah, you mentioned profit here. In the products market versus services, products tend to have lower profit margins. Services has a little bit more profit margin. How did you go and how do you determine what product and how to mark it up, and what's your ideal sweet spot of profit margins that you're trying to make?
We want to be at least at 40 to 50% profit margin. The one Celeste was just talking about, it's out of Australia. That's 100%, profit margin in that case. So, that we really don't want to. We in the early stages and those early wins, we were willing to take significantly less than that, just to get some wins. But that's when we're talking to these manufacturers, we are looking to at least try to be 30, 40 plus %, because it's a lot of, as a small company, we're there's a flurry of activity always. We're working really hard, but you got to make sure you're getting profit on the back end to keep the company running. It's got to be worth your time, energy, and effort. So that's sort of what we're shooting for.
Yeah, let me break that down for all of you who are joining us here. So there's a difference between gross profit and net profit. And so what you're talking about, Steve, here, you're talking about the market margins. So about, when let's assume you're paying $100 for a product. That's what the manufacturer is charging you. And so 30, 40% markup so you're talking more about the markup here, meaning that you're going to mark it up $150 to the government, because within that you're marking up 50%. So you're paying $100 for it. You're marking up to $150 to the government. And then you guys are really good at doing market research, right? Studying what's the market tolerance and what's the current rates in the, whether it's from GSA Advantage or what are some of the agencies paying for these similar products. You do your market research and then you base upon how much you can actually mark up. But for most of you who are developing your product and market fit in terms of related back to pricing, generally if you're paying $100, you want to mark it up about 30%. So you're selling to the government for about $130 at a minimal, or else you're not going to be able to pay your staff. You're not going to be able to pay for your office space and your, shipping cost, all the other things. And so keep that in mind. Now, you love it when you pay $100 and you can sell it for $200, right? Maybe $250. That's the ideal scenario. But that only happens when you're buying, you're working with new innovation, new technology, where there's not a lot of competition, and because it's emerging tech, the government is willing to pay whatever price to get the product there. So there's some key lessons here. One question, and then I'll see if Lainey have other questions. We got some really good things to share with you guys in a little bit here. Some great bonuses and other things for those of you who are hanging out with us. But can you guys share, maybe all three of you, maybe different areas of maybe pitfalls or challenges that you guys have learned in starting your government contracting business?
Yeah, for me, Celeste and I were talking about this earlier this morning, was for me, my go-to always with that is, there are 100 things on my to-do list that will move me incrementally forward. But my job is to figure out what are the 4 or 5 that are going to move me 5 and 10 steps forward. And that's been my biggest struggle. I feel like every week it's trying to figure that out. It's a challenge to figure that out. And so I'd say that's my biggest challenge that's going on.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's I'm always thinking ahead. Like, what can this look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? And sometimes I want to bring something that makes sense 5 years from now. I want to bring it to today. And so that's why I have my other 2 counterparts to keep me, thinking, okay, yeah, we'll get there, but we're not there yet. I just that's my tendency. And so I think that's the biggest challenge, is to let things happen incrementally and not try to make things happen too quickly.
I'm gonna have to say patience for me. And this has definitely taught me patience, but it's been worth it. And yeah, you just got to keep going. Every day you got to keep going, and eventually things just pop.
Yeah, really key lessons from all three of you in terms of I see all three points here, and so for all of you who are watching, these are gold nuggets that you actually want to take what they've experienced and borrow some of these things here for your own business. Lane, you have some closing questions for them?
Not a question, but just saying, I've definitely felt each of these pain points y'all are talking about, and I think there's a really interesting transition when you go from working for someone else, then working for yourself, according to what job you're coming from. The job I was coming from, I had stuff to get done for the day, and I was done for the day. Like that was kind of on my list, and then tomorrow I would have a new list. So it's funny when my husband says, "Are you done working?" I will never be done working. There's no such thing, and that definition does not exist. So am I at a point where I will go eat dinner and be finished for the day? Maybe. But, are you done working is not a answerable question, I feel like, when you are doing your own thing, because there's always more that could be done. There's always something, if it's those moving you 1 inch or moving you 10 foot, that kind of stuff. But there's always going to be something. I mean, it kind of never ends.
Absolutely. Government contracting is a process, right? You find a starting point and you just keep on going until you win your first contract. And when you win that first one, it may not change your life immediately, as Celeste shares, that it gives you confidence that you can do this here, but then continue to move forward, as Steven shared, that keep moving forward. And I have one of my favorite all-time quote I always share with everybody is, it's not a matter of if you'll win contract, but when you win a contract, just don't quit along the way. And if you do that, you will get to contracts. Now, with that, I want to share a little bit about their journey from a paper perspective, because we've been sharing about, they've been sharing about their journey from a experience perspective, but I want to share from a paper perspective. So I'm going to share my screen and see the process of what they took to get to their first few awards. And you guys remember this here. So this is where we started. We started here and we went from back in February of 2024. So it's been a year and about 4 or 5 months now when we first started our coaching sessions. And then we went from that to where we gave you some tools, some softwares, we assigned some early tasks. And then we say, okay, now go get a domain name, right? And then we talk about going after defining your why you're in business. We talk about what product, what services do, what niche offering you guys want to do. And we kind of went there developing your capability statements, some getting images for that. And then we talk about setting your company, doing your shares, how to set that up. And then getting your personal credit, making sure that your personal credit is starting your business credit, so that when you win contract, we went to certifications. And so by about 3 months into it, right, we were talking about certifications and then creating some a video, and we went into setting up your searching for opportunity. And this is what you were talking about, right, Steven? You were talking about, hey, every day you're looking for opportunities. And then you started attending some events. And then from that, you started going to the, some of the other events out there, and continue to equip yourself, learning. But this is right. So you started back in February, so exactly almost to the date, about 6 months later, you won your first 2 contracts. And I know you guys, said you don't remember exactly, but I remember because I'm in this journey with you. So I know approximately when you won your first contract. So your first 2 contract here, and we continue, right? We continue to go through this whole process of building your business and so forth. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about the coaching program that we use to help them, you can go to GovCoach, and I'm gonna put that in the link down here, and you can learn more about our coaching program, of what we did to kind of help them get to their government contracting business going. And when you go to GovCoach, this is what you're gonna see. It's just going to talk a little bit about our coaching program and what a business, what we do to help a business. So if you're interested, go to GovCoach and learn more about it here. With that, I want to see if there are some advice that you guys have, Steve, Celeste, and Steven. Any advice, good, bad, or ugly, or just any closing thoughts you want to leave to our listeners from your experiences. What would those things be?
I would say write a business plan. I think that's a really important thing. I keep my business plan next to me every day. It's there. It's in a slip. I can look at it. And then the second thing I would say is to plan out your day. I know some people hate that, and I'm not a fan of that, but I do plan out my day. And even if I don't accomplish everything that I have, sometimes I plan it from hour to hour. And if I don't accomplish it at that particular time or on that particular day, it's okay. But what that does is it keeps me on track, because I can tend to wander off into activities that aren't productive if I don't have something to keep me on track.
Yeah, I know. For me, one is, you mentioned coaching. All of us need coaching. in whatever form or fashion, we all need coaching because we can't see. And sometimes even like you brought up, you remember certain, points in the game where it's like it's a blur for us. But you need more sets of eyes, and I think finding a coach, whatever that is really important because you can't do it by yourself. And I think the other thing is, I remember when Stephen and I started another business a while back. It was my goal was not necessarily to make money. It was to get close to him and teach him how to work hard. And I always used to tell him, it's work sometimes sucks, and you need to learn how to embrace the suck, and and fight through and make it grind and grit, like you were saying, Laney.
Awesome. Steven?
Um, I would say really relationships, like be good to be good to people you work with, and sometimes it may not be a fit right then, but a lot of times we've had stuff that wasn't a fit then and it's turned around and shown up big for us later.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a great job of sourcing out new manufacturers and distributors and partners. And so, absolutely, treat people well. Some of these companies, they will help you guys to build wealth for you, Stephen. And I know, Steve, you share that sometimes is, you and Celeste, you live your life, and now you're building a legacy for Stephen. And so, some really important lessons there. For all of you who are in business, ultimately you build a business either to build a legacy business where you hand it off to your family, or you build a business to sell. And you guys are building, in this situation, you guys are building a legacy business so that it can be generational. So really encouraged by that. More than anything, just really excited for you to have. I remember the first time we went to dinner and you guys said, "Hey, Abe, we want to start a business in government contracting." And here we are a year and a half later, and you have a business and you won contracts, and you've demonstrated to not only to yourself, but to really to all of our audience out there that it is possible to start a government contracting business from zero revenue to actually getting to your first contract and continue now to grow your business. So really important lessons that you've shared here. Lainey, any final thoughts? And then we're going to one last thing I want to share with everybody before we wrap up here.
Yeah, I just want to say thank y'all for coming on. It's so interesting and refreshing, to see first family business because that's what I come from, but also just to hear about this amazing journey. And I think it really puts into perspective for our listeners, new people in the government contracting world. This doesn't have to be 5 or 10 years before you get a success. Get the coaching, learn what you need to learn, and you can be successful in a pretty short amount of time, doing the right things. And that's why, um, I mean, I coached with Abe and now I get to work with Abe, but that's the reason kind of GCA does what we do because we want you to succeed, but I don't want to say fast because this is not a, get rich quick scheme by any means. There's work that has to be put in, but there's success that comes from government contracting. So thank y'all today for just kind of explaining everything and kind of letting us see into your business and your day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and so if you're hanging out with us, thanks for hanging out all the way to the end of this episode here. And next week we're going to come back. We're going to talk about uh, the war and how war impacts government contractors, good, bad, and ugly. So come back, Lainey. If you have the link, put in the chat there so that people can join us for next week's episode. And then for many of you who are not part of the GovCon community yet, we have a community of where businesses come together to help each other out. And we're going to give you a really special plan. For $1, you can become get a trial membership in the GovCon community, where we have events, we have classes, we have lots of good resources there. For some of you who are part of the GovCon community, thanks for always being part of our family here in the with the Government Contractor Association. I'll put the link in there as well for the to get the $1 trial membership in the Government Contractors Association. And then all of you who are hang out with Steve, Steven, and Celeste. Really grateful for you guys hang out, and those watching us on replays. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments if you have questions, or if there's certain things that you want to learn or you want us to cover in terms of our podcast here. Just leave a comment down there. We check every single comments that is left here. With that said, Steve, Steven, and Celeste, thank you so much for hanging out with Lainey and I on this podcast here. I am rooting for you, as always. Really excited about what the next year and a half will do for you, because usually there's the inflection point where you hit that huge hockey stick growth. So I really can't wait to see that side of it in your business. Thanks for hanging out with us. And to everybody else, you are one contract away
and one grant away from all your dreams, from all the things that you want, and from your organization and business success. Thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.